Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Door here, and today I'll be bringing you my reaction to Percy Jackson Season 1, Episode 8, titled The Prophecy Comes True. Mount Olympus beckons, and Percy must face his greatest battle yet. So, this is the final episode of this season, and is named after the final chapter of the book. And yeah, I'm very looking forward to this. Because obviously, most of what happened in this episode didn't happen in the movie because Ares is not a character in the movie. Neither was the request to get Hades his helm back or any of that stuff, which is all going to be addressed in this episode. So, yeah. I do hope, because there was a line at the end of the last episode that did get me a little worried, which was Poseidon saying that the day that he needs it most, once he knows about the world and everything, when he needs it most, I will be by his side. I do hope that doesn't mean that Poseidon's actually going to interfere. I don't think it will, but there is a chance, and it would sort of diminish from what's meant to happen this episode if he does. Speaking of Poseidon, I completely failed to notice that when Sully lit the match and dropped it into the ice cream, that was her making a sacrifice to Poseidon to summon him. Like how the campers scrape their food into the fire to pray to their parents. Yeah, I completely failed to realize that's what was happening. I thought that was just some very convoluted summoning thing that just made no sense. But yeah, that's on me. Anyway, let's get this episode started in 3, 2, 1, go. I I don't think I addressed it in the Waterland episode, but Ares has an aura of aggression that makes him feel like every bully you've ever had all at once, which is why Percy gets so aggressive when he confronts him and everything. He's also meant to have flames in his eyes, like the explosion of a nuclear bomb, but that was obviously changed just to make things a bit easier. Interesting. That was interesting. Oh, huh, huh. Hmm. You can't attack them. Hmm. But someone did. I already said hi to her. He's big enough to use a Y handle just one handed and pick up his opponent with the other. Did his eyes just change color? First blood. Hmm. That was over a bit quicker than I was expecting. There we go. Hmm. Hmm. So she's giving him the necklace. Well, yeah. 5 beads for her 5 years at camp and her dad's college ring. Funny thing is, him putting that on the table was in the trailer. Now let's see what Olympus looks like. Oh yeah, that's fucking opulent. Yes. She squishes it. they really are addressing several of the things that I've commented on them not putting in earlier episodes. Like the sword training thing with Luke, Annabeth's fear of spiders. The Olympian Council. 12 seats. Interesting that they're all the same, except for the etchings, because they were all described as different. Like Poseidon's was a beach chair with spots for a fishing rod and his trident. Hephaestus's was technological. Apollo's, I think, was golden, and his sister was silver. Hmm. Your own son? Like your forbidden daughter? Oh, you're gonna see him. Oh, well. Technically, your character's going to see him many times again, but you unfortunately won't. I obey as well as the tide does. That's not returning to the sea. What comes from the sea will always return to the sea. Unless, of course, I want to teleport you somewhere else. Hmm. Those two look like they could be the Stoles. Or they could be, Castor and Pollux. Hmm. new cold friend. Backbiter. Show up on the winter solstice when Olympian has its council. Take the helm, turn invisible, take the bolt. Is he going to explain why it's called Backbiter? Interesting. That is very interesting. Her being there and standing against Luke for Percy. That Percy has a beat now. He's your father too. Really? I'd love if he was talking to one who wanted to stay full year. Because she's been a year-round camper for 5 years. Hmm. So, Percy still hasn't technically been cleared of anything that's happened in this on the quest. So, how exactly is he going to go home? To be honest, how did he get to the Empire State Building? Well, yeah. Blue pancakes. In loving memory of Lance Reddick. I wonder, is there a credits thing? Yes, yes, there is. I figured it was gonna be that. Don't ask your lawyer how to pick up. This is your own fault, mate. Even the box turtles, though. I had a feeling Gabe being petrified was gonna be how this ended, considering it's how all versions of this have ended. Okay, so that was an entertaining episode. The fight against Ares, when I was finished a lot quicker than I thought it would be. Because then again, I Battle My Jerk Relative is only 14 pages. How it happened in the book was Ares and Percy, they did get into single combat. And, well, single combat in the fact that while they were having their sword fight, Ares actually summoned up a boar, which is his sacred animal, the same way Athena has her owl, and he used that in the fight against Percy. So Percy had to dodge the boar. It actually drove him back into the surf, which then he used to get one up on the boar and then stab it. He also then uses the water to throw Ares off his game, slashes his heel, which he does in the show. Yeah, so that pretty much the same. And In this, Ares says, "You've made an enemy for life." In the book, he actually goes as far as to put a curse on Percy, saying that when you need it the most, when you are in the hardest battle for your life, your sword will fail you. Which basically means, I can't kill you, but I will be the instrument for your demise, because I'm going to make it so you can't fight back in a battle that will kill you. And the curse does actually show up in one of the later books. So since he didn't actually say the curse, I wonder if when we get to that point, they're going to have a flashback to this moment, or they're going to have a voiceover from Ares saying, "Your sword will fail you because of me." What also happens in the book at that fight is a bunch of cop cars show up, and Ares, his sword, actually briefly flickers to shotgun, and he blows up one of the cop cars to keep them away from interfering in the fight. And by doing so, when he leaves, when Percy gives the helm back to Alecto, which actually was the shield that Ares went to and got Percy to retrieve from Waterland, you actually see when Ares rocks up on his bike at the beach, the shield which he'd placed on the front of his bike morphs back into the Helm of Darkness when he gets called out. And basically, once the fight's over, a darkness passes in front of the sun, which is basically Kronos' influence, and Ares runs. Then Alecto comes down. Percy gives her the helm to give back to Hades. The cops then come, and the mist has reworked their memories so that now when they think back to the bus that Percy and that blew up, they actually remember Ares having been on the bus with them and forcibly escorting those kids away. Basically, Percy isn't the one behind everything. He and his friends were kidnapped by this guy, and it led to a battle on the beach where Percy fought his captor and freed himself, and that is how Percy's name gets cleared. And the people of, I don't actually remember where he is, but they come together to get him the money needed to travel to New York so he can give the lightning bolt back to Zeus and that. And there's also this funny part where Percy on the news goes, "And my loving stepdad would like to thank all of the people of this city by giving them a free appliance from his store. Just call this number and claim your reward," as a way to get back at Gabe for all the shit that he's done and for smearing his image in that. So he goes back, he gives the bolt to Zeus. Zeus and Poseidon are both already in the throne room. There is no we're gonna continue this war. There's no I concede, you win, all of that. Zeus does still threaten to kill Percy because, well, it's Zeus, of course he's going to do that, but he does get talked out of it. Percy gets transported back to camp. There's no plot point or anything of them suspecting Clarice or anything. So that whole part of this story isn't. Luke actually takes Percy away to celebrate, takes him into the forest where he's got a 6-pack of Coke just smuggled in from a diner a convenience store down the road. Because you're not meant to have outside food in that at camp. So he takes Percy there, shares a Coke with him and everything. He actually brings out Backbiter to show him. And the reason that it's called Backbiter is because the blade is half celestial bronze down one side of it, and it's regular steel on the other. It's a two-sided blade, half celestial bronze to hurt the mythical world, and half steel to hurt the mortal world. That's why it's called Backbiter, because it can be swung both ways and can hurt both worlds. And what he does is he doesn't really offer Percy a position because he knows Percy won't accept it. So he summons a scorpion from Tartarus that is super deadly, and he summons it to crawl up on Percy's leg and everything, and he's like, any sudden movement, that thing will strike and you will be dead. I'm doing this so that you can't tell anyone while I'm trying to escape. So he leaves. Percy does manage to kill the scorpion, but not before he's stung. Luckily, as he's stumbling his way back to camp, a dryad spots him, takes him the rest of the way. They heal him up and everything. He then has to tell everyone that Luke betrayed him and everything. Annabeth was not there. She didn't see anything. There was always that bit of doubt in the future books until they meet Luke again as to whether it actually happened that way, whether Luke was actually allied with Kronos and everything, because he's basically a big brother to her. Well, he sees himself as a big brother to her. She has feelings for him. Which, sort of a good thing they don't put in this, but also it is realistic that she idolizes him. He's several years older, so he sees her as a little kid. She idolizes and has a thing for him. That's not uncommon. But I can also see why they'd want to avoid that. But yeah. And then, basically, at the end of the book, they all go their own ways. Grover out to search for Pan. Annabeth goes home to meet her, to live with her dad and everything. Percy goes back to his mum. And, yeah. The gods send Percy back Medusa's head, as they do here. And he actually leaves it to his mum. And she goes out and turns Gabe, the landlord Eddie, and the other two friends in the middle of their poker game. She turns them all to stone, sells that sculpture to get a whole bunch of money to help support her and Percy, actually, so she doesn't have to work and can focus on her dreams, which is becoming a writer. Because all of these books, the first series, is actually written in Percy's perspective after the fact. After the end of the 5th book, Sally actually helped Percy write a book series about the events that happen, and that is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It's also Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods and Percy Jackson and the Greek Heroes. Those two anthology books, they're also written as though Percy wrote them. Yeah. So this one did hit a lot of the same beats. But it also had its own spin on things, which, like I said, some weird changes, some probably for the better. I can understand them trying to build up the rivalry between Clarissa and Percy even more, because that is a big thing in Sea of Monsters, is the rivalry between Percy and Clarice. That's actually a central theme of that book. But yeah, so to have suspected that she was the one who did it, to know that her father actually was involved, to beat him in a battle, the god of war, beaten by a 12-year-old in war, completely dishonoring him, which in turn reflects badly on her, because Ares and Clarice is meant to mirror Percy and Gabe in the fact that it's an abusive father-child relationship. And so there is meant to be that thing where, because of Percy's success and everything, Ares cracks down even harder on his kids, which in turn makes them resent Percy even more. And now, on top of that, they also suspected that Clarice would turn against the Olympians and everything. I can see how they're setting things up for the next book. But as far as I know, there hasn't been any official announcements as to whether Sea of Monsters is going ahead. I, for one, really hope it does. But, yeah. All in all, this series, it was good. I still would rather read the book than watch this show, because I think the book was better, but it was really good. Honestly, my rankings from best to worst. Episode 5, the Waterland episode, is the first one. Then we'll go the Medusa episode, which is episode 3. So 5, 3. Then I reckon 4 and 7, the Chimera and the Underworld episode, they're fairly the same. I reckon this one just edges above them. So it's 5, 3, 8, 3, 4 and 7 are tied. Then we'll go episode 2, episode 1, and then episode 6. Episode 6 is by far the worst in my opinion. But yeah. So 5, 3, 8, 4 and 7, 2, 1, 6. And there is a big gap between 1 and 6. That's my definitive ranking of these episodes. I still would have liked episode 2 to be split into 2 episodes, which would have probably made them a little bit higher. I can understand the whole Luke training Percy in sword fighting. That needed to be in it. I am glad they brought it back in this episode. The thing is, Percy's meant to use that disarming strike in this book. Well, in this series. And he doesn't. He doesn't even successfully do it against Luke. But it is good they brought it into it eventually. The same with Annabeth fearing spiders. That really should have been left where it was, or at least have come from Annabeth herself. But in the context we were given, it was very apt to use that as an analogy. The fear of spiders, small, scary, and squished, is a good way to describe what the gods feel towards demigods. So while I do still think it should have come from Annabeth originally, like for us as the audience, we should have seen that from her point of view before we get Luke talking about it. Chronologically, Luke telling Percy about it as an analogy in that scenario, or maybe bringing it back when he's trying to recruit Percy at the end, works as well. So show us it in episode 4, bring it back in episode 8, not episode 4, episode 5, whatever, and that would have been perfect. But anyway, I really enjoyed this show. I'm looking forward to season 2. Hopefully, they hear the feedback that has been given for this series from all of the fans, which is let some things breathe. Some characters have been changed about too much, and don't completely change scenes just for the sake of the story. Like episode 6 was a big one, and a fact that at least vocal chunk of the fandom said the movie did that better. And these are the same people who will shit on the movie at any opportunity they get, and they said that was the scene that it did better, really should indicate that maybe what we did there wasn't good, and we should try not to do that again. Oh yeah, one more thing I will add is there's actually a part of Luke's argument at the end of the book that wasn't put into this series. And that is how he got the scar on his face. So basically, Luke was upset at the gods, at his father, because of what happened to his mum. We don't know this in the books at this time. We don't find out about May Castellan until book 5. And so, as a way to try and appeal to his son, Hermes gave Luke a quest, which was to steal a golden apple from the Garden of the Hesperides, which, if you know your Greek mythology, is a quest that was given to Hercules. So that was just, in Luke's eyes, rubbing even more salt into the wound, because they couldn't even give him a unique quest. They had to give him something that someone else had already done. So it's not like he'd had the glory because, someone else already did that first. And on top of that, he failed and was given a scar from the dragon that guarded the tree. And that... Look, I can understand not putting that into this final episode because, well, the way the scene was set up didn't really allow for it. If that's the case, they should have said that instead of the May Castellan stuff in the Lotus Hotel episode. Because we're meant to learn that as Percy learns it, because it's actually important to the 5th book actual plot, is learning Luke's backstory. So for them to already have that when there was already a story in the 1st book from Luke's past that could have served it more, I feel like that would have made it so that that episode wasn't as bad. And it was sort of parallel what happens in this episode where Luke tells Percy about Annabeth's fear of spiders. Like, he tells Percy... Yeah, she tells Percy about Luke's failed quest from his father, and Luke tells Percy about Annabeth's fear as sort of parallel, and it works. But, yeah. Or they could have still put it in that ending scene in his pitch to try and recruit Percy. But I feel it would have worked better in the earlier episode with the way in which this episode was structured. Anyway, back to whatever I was saying. Yeah. Don't change the characters around that much, or at least have them feel like the character from the book. Let some things breathe. Like, don't put 5 or 6 chapters in one episode. And don't just completely change things from how they happen in the book. If they can follow that, then season 2 is going to be great. And honestly, Sea of Monsters, least favorite book of the series. I wouldn't be surprised if I like the show version more than I do the book. If it's anything like this season was, I'll like it more than I like the book. But anyway, I'm going to end this one here. I'll catch you in the next one.